C, entertainment free from obscenity, vulgarity, and violence will be a sign of a healthy society. D, media is required to be accountable to the general public. E, self-regulation is not properly and appropriately followed by the media. F, the Press Council of India does not have enough teeth and authority to take action against abuse of independence by media. And G, an independent regulatory authority for the media is necessary to check unhealthy tendencies. This House urges upon the government to form an independent and empowered regulatory authority capable of taking action against erring media. Mr. Vice Chairperson, sir, the essence of this entire resolution is independent and empowered regulatory authority capable of taking action against erring media. We had the privilege of hearing two outstanding interventions from Honorable Srimati Prabha Thakur and from the very distinguished Mr. Rama Joyce, both of whom I heard very, very intently. I think, Mr. Vice Chairperson, sir, before we set out to deal with the core issue involved in this resolution, it would be important that we recap the development of our democracy as it has unfolded over the past 64 years. It's indeed a matter of pride and privilege for us as Indians that except for possibly an odd country here or there, all those who attained independence or liberation from the yoke of imperialism in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, in and around the time that India became independent, either were subjected to some form of military dictatorship, one-party rule, or totalitarianism. It is indeed something that we need to be proud of, that we have an unbroken democratic tradition which extends to the time that we attained our independence. And at the heart of this democratic tradition really lies the freedom of, or really lies the free press. Article 19(1)(a), which both Mr. Chaudhary and Mr. Rama Joyce referred to, provides for the freedom of speech and expression to every individual. And we have exculpated from it the freedom of the press. And the founding fathers of the Constitution, in their wisdom, rightly decided that there should be appropriate caveats on this freedom. Now, the question which really arises to my mind, Mr. Vice Chairperson, sir, is that how do you find the golden mean? Where does the golden mean lie between the freedom of speech and expression, from where we've extrapolated the freedom of the press, and the reasonable restrictions which have also been provided in the Constitution? But before we set out to deal with that, I think it would be important that we have an overview of the media landscape as it exists today. You have the print media, which has a tradition which goes back, if nothing less, at least 150 years, even predating or possibly coinciding with the first war of independence in and around 1857. You have the broadcasting medium, radio, which also has a time-honored tradition, television, which has been now around for about 4 decades, and private television as we know it for about 2 decades now. Then you have the online media, and recently you have the phenomena of the social media or the new media, which is of course in the Indian context administered by the ministry which is headed by my honorable senior colleague, Mr. Kapil Sibal. The short point that I'm trying to make, Mr. Vice Chairperson, is that you have a synthesis which has taken place, a convergence which has taken place over the past couple of years, whereby the lines between print, broadcasting, online, and social media have blurred. And therefore, you have to deal with a paradigm whereby all of us not only live in an information age, but which we live in an information age which at times can be quite overwhelming, if not intimidating to say the least. Over a period of time, and this is not the first time that this debate is taking place in this honorable house, concerns have been expressed about aberrations which are there in the media space. I have with me a speech delivered by an honorable member of this house in 1974 while speaking on the Press Council's Second Amendment Bill. And it is indeed very illustrative if you were to read the speech, because it reflects more or less in a different span of time the concerns which have been articulated by Mr. Chaudhary and of course which have been very eminently endorsed by both Prabhaji and Mr. Rabha Joyce. I would just quote one paragraph from the speech just to illustrate as to how this debate has spanned across the contours of the Indian parliamentary system, going back possibly to its very inception. And the illustrative paragraph is that I would, and I quote, this honorable member, who is now no longer with us, late Mr. R.K. Mishra, that I would submit that the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting is being too touchy about this talk of the freedom of press. Now, where is the freedom of the press? What do we have in India? We have the freedom of the newspaper owner in India. We have the freedom of the newspaper proprietor, and in some cases, the delegated freedom which is enjoyed by the newspaper managers. But with all due respects to these views, Mr. Vice Chairperson, this is only a part of the story. Because the fact remains that the vibrance and the robustness of the Indian media has, to a very large extent, also acted as an oversight mechanism which has helped to broad base, strengthen, and consolidate our democratic institutions. While I entirely share some of the concerns that which you have raised about paid news, about private treaties, about TAM, TRPs, sensationalism bordering on insensitivity, cross-holdings in the media space, monopolistic practices, the question I ask myself is an independent regulator really the solution to these problems? As the spokesperson for my party, Mr. Vice Chairperson, I had the privilege of dealing with the front end of the media. And now, as the Minister of Information and Broadcasting, I also have the remit of dealing with the back end of the media. And it may sound a little insensitive or a little blasé if I were to put it or articulate it in those terms. But the fact is that the media is a business. like any other business in this world. And unfortunately, and I do not hold any excuse for these aberrations, but the limited point that I'm trying to make is that unfortunately, in this business, the revenue models are very flawed. I'm not saying that that should be an excuse for aberration or that should be an excuse for illegality. But there are certain realities which I think it is important for me to share with this House. And that is why, especially in the broadcast space, when this government, through a statutory remit, embarked upon the process of digitization, the entire effort was to see that transparency is brought about in the broadcasting sector, from the consumer to the broadcaster, taking the intermediaries along. A vibrant revenue model can be built which can possibly deal with some of the aberrations which have been concerning us for all this while. However, it is not that we are, as a government, trying to hide behind the fig leaf of aberrations of flawed revenue models and letting the media off the hook. That is not the case. This Parliament, in its wisdom, has, over a period of time, enacted legislation which provide the mechanism for exercising oversight on various facets of the media. Now, it's another matter that there may have been times when the superintendence or the implementation of that may not have been to the satisfaction of everybody concerned. But that does not mean that there is an absence of a statutory architecture which empowers and enables. And when I talk about governments, I talk about governments in a continuum across time and space to be able to deal with the aberrations and take effective action. The Press Council of India Act in 1978. If I were to go into the reason as to why the parliamentary leaders at that point in time decided that the Press Council of India would be a body of peers which would exercise both moral and, in certain cases, statutory superintendence over the media and not be armed with excessive powers which could disturb that golden mean between the freedom of speech and expression and the reasonable restrictions. I do not think that they were really wrong in their approach. The Press Council of India does have the ability, does have the authority at either suo motu or on the receipt of a complaint. They are able to take action. And it's another matter that maybe we live in interesting times whereby a moral censor or a moral reprimand does not carry that amount of weight. But that does not mean that the Press Council of India does not have the authority to be able to take action. But given the times that we live in, as we speak, government is considering amendments to the Press Council of India Act. We are trying to ensure that this act is made, I would not like to use the word stringent, but is made more effective so that it could be concurrent and adaptable to the times. And I have no hesitation, though of course these are amendments in the draft stage, Mr. Vice Chairperson, sir, but I have no hesitation in sharing some of the salient points with you, that the Press Council may direct the authorities of the state to suspend the release of an advertisement to the offending newspaper till the adjudication is published or for the period specified by the Council. On the award of 2 censors under this section, these are amendments to section 14 that we are considering, within a period of 6 months, the Council may ask the concerned authorities to suspend government-funded advertisement to the newspaper, and in case of an editor or a journalist, suspend the accreditation of such editor or journalist for a period not exceeding 3 months. If on more than 2 such instances of non-compliance with the directions issued under this section within a period of 1 year, the PCI may direct, the Press Council of India may direct the authorities for suspension of registration of newspapers for up to a fortnight. But these are contentious issues. And there is a need for consensus not only within Parliament, but across the stakeholder space, because there could be room for legitimate criticism that government is actually trying to overreach and is trying to disrupt that golden mean which I keep referring to. Similarly, under the cable television, Mr. Vice Chairperson, sir, I can conclude in 5 minutes. You want me to conclude now? Or, in a sense, Mr. Vice Chairperson, sir, the short point that I'm trying to make is that there are mechanisms, frameworks, which are available under the different sections of different acts which empower the government to take action against what the honorable member has said is the erring media. So therefore, under those circumstances, I would request the honorable member to withdraw his resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.